So my name is Rob Powell. This is my Golf Mk2 16 valve turbo. I've always liked Mk2s, so I used to ride BMXs. All my friends had Mk2 Golfs, all had Volkswagens. We used to travel all over the country, sleeping in the cars, riding bikes on the weekend. So all my friends had those, and yeah, that I grew into that mould. And yeah, bought this and systematically destroyed it ever since. I bought it through a contact through a friend who owned a body shop, and he knew about the car. It was owned by a friend of his, and they'd bought it off an old lady, and it had done 55,000 miles when I bought it. It was absolutely standard. It was a pristine Golf 8 valve Mk2 GTI, the holy grail nowadays. Where to start? So, exterior. I bought the car 18 years ago. The car was originally black. It was not the colour it is now, which is aubergine, edition 1 colour. Yeah, just started doing bits on it, and then 2009 I started stripping the engine bay with a friend, and he helped me do the engine bay, and we put an smooth engine bay, pretty much as you see it today. Just tweaked quite a lot since, because it did a second evolution of it. Did a few shows, won a fair few trophies off the back of that, but I was never happy and content with it. Got to where we are now 11 years later. It sat for 3 years in a rotisserie, being worked on, where we welded up the floor of the car, took all the underseal off, smoothed all the grommet holes in the car, and yeah, filled everything, painted it. And the underneath's pretty much like the outside of the car, so that's one of the unique points of the car, really. So yeah, bodywork, it's evolved quite a lot from using it as a daily car. Back in 2010, when I stripped it down, I wanted to start with everything genuine, because you can never beat genuine panels, as most people know. Genuine panels for these cars are so hard to find. So I spent 5 years looking for the bumpers, and a guy called Andy Butler helped me out with those. I bought new wings from Volkswagen, I bought new bonnet, I bought new doors, new tailgate, all new plastics, and just spent years and years and years just finding and hoarding parts. And I would say the Mk2s are worse than the Mk1s for parts, so it was a real struggle, and yes, genuine stuff, you can never beat it. The interior, so I went down a Bavarian theme, so it's actually an idea I nicked from the Alpine interior. So I actually took it from an 80s Alpine BMW interior where it had the blue and green stripe. I nicked that and used the body colour, and then used the stripe down the side of the car and down the door cards, and then there's a stripe running through, which is purple and silver right through the theme of the car, and the line actually goes right through the seats, through the rear seats, and then into the actual parcel shelf as well. It's got standard Mk2 Golf front seats in it, which were cool when I was 22. Now I don't fit them, now I'm a bit fatter and older. But yeah, it had all new bolsters in it. I put Corrado rear bench in it, but we actually had the sides extended as well, because the Corrado rear bench doesn't quite fit in a Mk2. So the guy who reupholstered it widened the actual seat cushions so it fits perfect. And then we've done some pretty trick stuff with it, like the battery's actually mounted under the centre hump of the Corrado rear seat. So if you lift what's usually where the first aid kit is, there's actually the battery for the car. Yeah, then we've got like the duo style gauges in the dash, which were 20-year-old gauges, which are cool, which are the switch blanks. So the switch blanks are converted into gauges, which were really hard to get hold of, and a bit of a cult classic back in the day when I got the car. So they're worth an absolute fortune now for what they are, and yeah, pretty cool piece of kit. I've tried to keep the dash standard, because I always really like the Mk2 Golf dash and the steering wheel. I think it's sort of a feature of the car that you can't really do too much without changing the whole look of the car and feel of it. But to sit in, yeah, I'm 6'3", and it's not the comfiest of cars. Like I say, when you're young and in your mid-20s, early 20s, they're cool to drive about in. Now, they're absolutely horrid. But that's all cars for you. But yeah, the nostalgia when you sat behind the wheel and stuff is pretty cool. And when we did the trim, we sort of went over and above and just trimmed bits that people, unless they're really into the Mk2, wouldn't necessarily notice. So all the bottom of the Recaros are trimmed up. We've put like little bits of carbon detailing in there, and yeah, like brand new carpets from Newton Commercials right through the car, and tried to keep it looking standardish, but just mega tweaks, just really messed about with small tweaks in the background. Unless you're a Mk2 nerd, you'll probably never spot them. It's running a tilt and pedal box in there as well to get rid of the brake servo, but that was a massive piece of the interior. So I had to weld all the bulkhead in. That took me months to do, and it's all customised behind the bulkhead and strengthened and stop it cracking, because it's really bad for cracking in the engine bay. and had to move all the steering column, do loads behind the dashboard. It's got the Vortex centre console, which was a period upgrade from like the dealers that you could do as well, which were mega rare. I think I swapped some bit for a set of brakes back in the day for that, so I did a pretty good deal there. I did pretty well out of that one. So yeah, it just kept evolving and evolving and evolving. And oh yeah, the roof lining, Mk2 was horrific for the roof lining. Sagging or the material separating because they're basically made out of like a fibre board. Absolute rubbish. For a Volkswagen, it's totally not a Volkswagen build quality piece. So I actually had the roof lining made from fiberglass by a company in Luxembourg. And yeah, this was 7 or 8 years ago when you can get reproductions now, but then you couldn't. So I had it retrimmed in Alcantara and then had all the pillar trims trimmed as well to match. And then all the bolts and fastenings are chromed with it. So yeah, it's evolved quite a lot really and snowballed as the rest of the car did. Way back when I had an ABS engine, which is a 16-valve Mk3 engine. People refer to that as like the pinnacle of the Mk3 Golf. That engine is the pinnacle of the 16-valve engine that Volkswagen produced. I ran a standard, well not standard, a standard, relatively standard internals on one of those originally on the car, and lightened and balanced the bottom end of the car, all that kind of stuff. And I just thought it needs to go to something a bit more special. And then, lo and behold, we have a chrome 16-valve turbo. But when I built that, I actually built it to run it, whereas the car really is a show car now. I actually built it to drive. So it had custom pistons in there, so it's got low compression pistons from Wasner. It's got integrated engineering H-section rods, ARP main studs bottom end, light and balanced full bottom end, so the crank, the flywheel, the clutch, everything. Done it properly, not just balancing the flywheel up and lightening that. Got the bigger injectors in there. Because it's turboed, it's got a custom inlet manifold and a custom exhaust, which I made myself, learned how to TIG weld and just whirled away in the garage and practiced, so I was happy, and then made the exhaust system and then branched that right to the rear of the car really, up to an off-the-shelf back box. I'm in the industry and I always have been in the industry fixing vehicles, but there's certain bits I wanted to learn and develop myself. And that's what I kind of did with this car. I learned how to do things. I polished most of the components, apart from the inlet manifold, the cam cover and the gearbox, which the polisher did in Glasgow. And then we shipped all the chrome to, all the aluminium chrome got done in California by Calchrome, because a lot of people don't realise, but a lot of the chroming in the UK, because of the emissions laws in the EU, it doesn't last very long. So yeah, most of the components went over to California. But we did it in a big chunk and batch moved it over there, got it chromed and got it sent back, so the shipping costs weren't too bad. The tax was a bit of a killer, but that's what you got to pay if you want good stuff. It's running a base map at the minute, but everything's built and the mapper assures me it'll do around 400 brake horsepower. Yeah, it goes pretty well. With the gearbox as well, it's a diesel gearbox out of a Vento TDI. So if you actually max this out, which you wouldn't want to, it'll do 170 miles an hour, which in Mk2 will be utterly frightening. But yeah, it'll go as well as what it looks, which is, I've always built it for that intention. It just snowballed as a car after that. And it's running a Turbonetics turbo, thumper turbo. So yeah, it's just trying to keep the heat down in the engine base. It doesn't destroy all the paintwork and everything when you do run it. So the wheels are Corrado RSs. So they're actually the BBS RS 301s, which were an optional extra on the Corrados. They were quite a limited run. They're quite a rare wheel, and I've modified all the hubs and stuff so they bolt straight on, so there's no adapters or anything. I got them from a guy in Birmingham in about 2016, and then I sent them to Mike the Polisher up in Glasgow, and he refurbed them for me. So I don't like to admit this, but they're not chrome out of the centres, they're chrome powder coat. I wanted to chrome them, but there was some issues with them that would have probably destroyed the wheels if we'd have done that. So I backed down on my initial plans, and he recommended that we chrome powder coat them and then polish the dishes. They're using standard original BBS bolts, which were refinished and re-chromed, which are quite rare as well. You can get the aftermarket stuff, but if you look on the bolt head round the actual bolt, it says BBS, so like the proper nerds will spot that, the BBS fans. But yeah, it was a lot of Mike's work. It's probably one of the things that I haven't actually had that much contact with in building the car. I took the wheels up to him and he refinished them and got them back, and yeah, he's done a fantastic job on them. I think the biggest difficulties with the Mark II Golfs is finding parts. They're horrific to find parts for now. And you can get aftermarket stuff, but genuine stuff's just rare. You know, you used to look on eBay and you'd always see the eBay rare like finds, but Mark IIs generally are now to find new old stock or decent stuff that's worth fitting to your car. It's hard to come by, especially in the UK as well with the right-hand drive stuff compared to the rest of Europe. But it's kind of an anxiety of owning a Mark II, I think. But you just got to roll with it. The purpose of the car is a show car. It's an out-and-out show car. I make no bones about that. People ask me if I drive it. No, I don't. I trail it to shows. The reason I trail it to a show is because it's got chrome brake discs and all the calipers are chromed, every single nut, bolt, washer, subframe, the underneath of the car's smoothed. If you drive it, it's basically going to undo all the work I've done. Would I like to drive it? Absolutely, I'd love to hammer it down a private road somewhere, but not as it stands now. That might be another evolution of the car where I actually take it back and actually underseal the car and do some stuff with it so I can actually use it and drive it to its potential and drive it to shows as well, which maybe one day I might do that. And I wanted to build something to go into Europe with, really, and compete in Europe. That's what I've done. We build some cool cars in the UK, but when you look at the level of detail from Germany, from the Belgians, the Dutch, the Eastern European guys building cars as well, their level of detail into the Volkswagens is just next level. But definitely one we can do at some European shows. And get out there to the European people, because with us being an island in the middle of the North Sea, a lot of the European people don't get to see stuff. So it's cool to get it exposed out there too. Biggest achievements, just seeing people's reactions to the car. You go to a show and people look at it and relatively looks like a standard Mark II Golf from the outside, and then they look in the mirrors and go, right, okay, it's got carbon fibre arch liners. Or they look under the engine bay and go, wow, that's a lot of chrome. I really like just seeing people's reactions, and I like people asking me questions about the car as well, and having good conversation with people and that are genuinely into it and interested, whether it's Volkswagen or whether they're into another brand or another manufacturer. I just like that interest. I also, obviously, I built the car to compete in shows. So yeah, I've won some shows with it. I've come best in show at West Side last weekend, which was utterly flattered because those guys are like top-notch European renowned guys for building Volkswagens. So for them to judge this as best in show, I was pretty flattered really, and their general reaction to it was pretty cool. So yeah, it does pretty well, but I've built it for a purpose, and I'll make no bones about that. I've got a bit of a competitive edge about me, so I don't like coming second. Would I do it again? Would I do it differently? I wouldn't do it again, no. I like to drive cars, and I've got cars that I do drive and put around racetracks, but no, it is kind of a waste of a car. It's cool to see people's reactions, but cars are meant to be driven. I would love nothing more than to drive it down a road, but then I look at what the consequence would be and my head sways me a different way. But never say never. But I am happy with the end result, and as the guy who mapped it said to me recently, because I was whinging at him, he said, at least you finished it. For every car that gets started, there's a lot of cars that never get finished, so I got to where I wanted to be with it, and I've fallen back in love with it again now, so that's why I might evolve it a bit more, but yeah, I would like to drive it one day. Funny stories with it. It's not been straightforward. I've had to have the engine bay and underneath repainted through various reasons. That was holding me back on the actual project. It took me 11 years, but that definitely delayed it. Massive problems with the crank sensor on it, that delayed me hugely as well, to the point where I literally could have chopped it in half with a grinder. I was that frustrated at one point, but I didn't, luckily. Funny stuff. We've had some good fun at car shows, not many that I'm going to talk about in public domain, but good laughs at car shows, a few beers, and sat around a camping chair over a fire and made some brilliant friends through it all, and that's what it's about to me, is travelling to car shows. We went to West Side last weekend, and me and my friend Dunk, who did all of the engine bay work, we were like stuck in traffic and thinking we're not going to get there in time, and then just put Spotify on and we'd put some Smokey and the Bandit on and we're laughing his heads off with the trailer on with the van, trailing the car to the show with Smokey and the Bandit theme tune rocking out through the car. So just being stupid really, and yeah, I don't know, I'm pretty immature at times when I'm not working. So I let my hair down, and yeah, with my mates and stuff, we take car shows seriously and like to go and enjoy ourselves and meet friends and meet people that we don't see, but yeah, we like a good laugh too in the background. Future plans for the car, I don't want to give too much away because I like my secrets for car shows. I like that old school unveiling. I've kept it pretty low key, mainly on forums and stuff, but maybe some big brakes on there. I did look at some carbon ceramic brakes, maybe like Porsche style carbon ceramics. It's just justifying the cost really for what it's actually used for. But yeah, there is some stuff I've got up my sleeve, but I'm not going to give too much away on what I'm going to be doing.